Okay. Yes, sir. All right. Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Michael Miles, Deputy Director of the CCB. This meeting is for the solicitation of input on packaging, labeling, and advertising regulations. Staff has put forward for comment potential changes to the packaging, labeling, and advertising regulations, along with various updates required through statutory changes from the last legislative session. Furthermore, there will be an open comment period for the public to comment on potential changes to packaging, labeling, and advertising regulations that they would like to see. Changes recommended today will not be presented to the board for approval, as the CCB is now under the APA. The language crafted from today's meeting will have to be given to the LCB for review, and a future workshop date will be selected, likely sometime in March. Before I move on to agenda item number 1, I ask that comments about packaging, labeling, and advertising regulations be given during the appropriate agenda item. Agenda item number 2 are the regulatory changes that staff is recommending, and we'll have various breaks going through there so you can get up and give comment on the individual regulations if you wish to. And agenda item number 3 will be an open period for industry and the public to present any changes to packaging, labeling, and advertising that they would like to see. Thanks, and we'll move forward with agenda item number 1, public comment. Sarah, please go ahead.
To provide public comment via telephone, call 669-444-9171. Enter webinar ID 840-3415-5008, followed by passcode 339932.
Okay, do we have any public comment down here in Las Vegas?
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Frank Hawkins. I'm with Nevada Wellness Center and Nevada Wellness Center West and Silver Black Cultivation. So if I heard you right, these comments and comments collected today will go to the CCB, and they'll come back, and there'll be another hearing, and there'll be a vote by the board.
Correct.
So the comments that we submitted in writing is
Good morning.
Morning.
Excuse me. For the record, my name is Bree Padilla. I currently have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the Chamber of Cannabis, an organization I have worked with almost since its inception for about 4 years. I would like to express our gratitude for the opportunity to partake in this pivotal public workshop addressing the proposed changes to advertising, packaging, and possession regs. Several of the issues slated for discussion today were brought to the CCB's attention in prior meetings by our organization and other industry participants and stakeholders. These matters have been of utmost concern as they have the potential to be revised in ways that maintain vital information and safeguards for consumers purchasing cannabis products. I urge the committee to give earnest consideration to all of the ideas presented during these discussions, especially those put forth by our licensees and our operators. These suggestions advocate for common sense alterations that would not only provide breathing space for these businesses to augment their revenue, but also prevent operators from being stifled by the burden of conflicting, duplicative, confusing, or onerous regulations that do little to enhance public health and safety. Furthermore, I am here to present concrete solutions that align with our previous conversations regarding labeling requirements. In particular, I wish to highlight the shared interest of all stakeholders and operators in the implementation of QR codes to streamline labeling regs. This approach can also help create a comprehensive database of information consuming cannabis consumers, product purchases, chains of custody, certificates analysis, and more. I strongly encourage the CCB to explore technology-based QR solutions such as Beacon Stack, Inkjet, Lightning Labels, Lucid Green, Tech Links, and Verify Me. These companies specialize in QR code solutions tailored to the specific needs of the cannabis sector and have already been successfully implemented in other state markets. My intention in making this comment and providing this feedback is to pave the way for our industry to experience tangible changes resulting from these workshops. We aim to provide immediate relief to operators who are grappling with excessively burdensome, confusing, and conflicting regulations in some instances. And we believe that by embracing technology and industry-tested solutions, we can create a more streamlined, efficient, and ultimately safer environment for us all to operate and consume in. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Anyone else down here in Las Vegas?
Grand Rising, Catrice Saunders for the record. How are you guys doing today? Thank you for having me. I represent Americans for Safe Access and Last Business Project. I'm a longtime patient and advocate. I've been working in the industry for over 15 years. I've seen firsthand the need for more sustainable packaging and waste reduction in the industry. When we first went from medical to retail cannabis, I had to open up thousands of childproof safety packages by hand. This caused my left wrist to pop out of place. Everything was done by hand before automation, and sometimes we would see thousands of patients a day. Now that we're adding cannabis loungers to the equation, there'll be even more packaging and waste. We need to make sure that we are using sustainable packaging and that we are recycling and composting as much as possible. I urge the CCB to take the following steps to promote sustainability in the cannabis packaging industry, requiring that all cannabis packaging be made from sustainable materials such as compostable paper, recycled plastic. Providing incentives for cannabis businesses to recycle and compost their waste, work with the cannabis industry to develop new and innovative ways to reduce packaging and waste. We have the opportunity to make the cannabis industry a leader in sustainability. By taking steps above outlined, we can reduce our environmental impact and create a more sustainable future for the industry. In addition to the above that I stated, I would like to also suggest that we would develop educational programs to help cannabis consumers understanding how to recycle and compost their cannabis packaging, work with other states and municipalities to develop national standards for sustainable packaging. We all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable cannabis industry. By working together, we can reduce our environmental impact and our carbon footprint and create a better future for ourselves and generations to come. And I know that they were starting to label in regards to what products had been remediated as well, so that people know what products have radiation so that they can be aware of health consequences for future things that need to be mitigated. Thank you guys for your time today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else down here in Las Vegas? How about Carson City? Sarah, anyone on the phone or online?
Regulation by
If you wish to provide public comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. There's no comment online.
Before I move on, just a quick comment. This was brought up before. The composting reg that we've been working on will probably be presented to the board in November for approval. And also I'd like to point out, I believe, unless I'm wrong, QR codes and electronic transfer of labels have been approved for well over a year. So dispensaries can be used at any time. So I'm going to turn it over now to Chief Cronkite. Go forward.
Good morning. Today I'll be going over the initial draft of proposed amendments to NCCR 6, 7, and 12 regarding packaging and labeling requirements for public input. I'll open it up for public comment at different points throughout. If there's a regulation that you would like to propose a change to that was not mentioned, please hold those comments and suggestions until the end. Please remember to only comment on the portion of the regulations that was just discussed. Additionally, if there are any changes you disagree with or would like added, please submit your proposed language along with your sources where applicable to me directly if you'd like to, or to the CCB or as public comment. All right, so I will go ahead and start with NCCR 6.010, 6.085, 6.120, and 7.025. All these regulations have been updated to align with new statutory allowances. And NCCR 7.030 has had language added to prevent cannabis-related accessories from being appealing to children. We did receive public input for 7.050 regarding delivery limits, and that is something that we will look into. Are there any public comments on NCCR 6 or 7 in Las Vegas?
Surprise, surprise.
Hey, good morning.
Good
Good morning.
My name is Jillian Nelson for the record. I believe it's section D, or section 6, part D, where it says, shall not advertise or offer any cannabis or cannabis product as free or donated without a purchase in the same transaction. So does that mean dispensaries can give away zero cost product to consumers as long as they're purchasing a full price or they're purchasing something at a dispensary?
Kara Cronkite for the record. I can clarify. So what that means is when they do promotions like buy one, get one free.
Mhm.
So as long as there is a purchase made in that same transaction, then the other items could be free with purchase.
Okay, given that this law is applicable to cannabis establishments in general, does this then mean that producers and cultivators can also give away zero cost items to dispensaries? Right now, we're having to do everything at a penny, and honestly, it's very annoying. Most stores don't even pay us for it at the end of it, but if we could just have something to where we don't have to do this penny out system, it would be much more efficient.
I will look into that.
Okay, thanks, Kara.
Okay, statutory things too. Because it's tax, for tax purposes.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Amanda Connor for the record, law firm of Connor and Connor. I was just coming to seek clarification on 6.085. With accompanied written security measures. Is that intended to mean standard operating procedures, which are required to be, security is required to be addressed in there, or is it trying to say there has to be written security measures at the entrances? I think there's some confusion on what that's intended. And then on 7.030, it does not have the exemption for logos, unlike 12.0155E, which has the same language, but exempts out if the item logo is approved. So I would suggest having the same language as 12.015E. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Is there any other public comment in Las Vegas? Any public comment in Carson City on NCCR 6 or 7?
Good morning. For the record, Ed Alexander, Soul Cannabis. 6.085, does this apply to emergency egress?
We can clarify that. But no, it is, it's for entrances.
Okay. I just want to make sure that an entrance isn't defined as an access point to a building, which would also qualify as emergency egress.
Correct. We can clarify that.
Okay. And I apologize, 6.010, in taking into account the new purchasing limits, are we also considering revised packaging limits? It seems interesting that we're still only allowing X amount of milligrams of THC in a cartridge, but we're effectively allowing people to purchase, 2.5 times what they previously could. So from a packaging and environmental footprint standpoint, it may also make sense for us to explore some expanded quantity limits within a given package.
Kara Cronkite for the record. We did look into that. However, those limits are outlined in statute, so we have no ability to change those.
Yeah,
Okay.
has to be a BDR, then alleged change during session.
Okay. 7.030. We've talked about this before. I think when we talk about marketing to children, it's a slippery slope. We've got a lot of things in today's world that may seem appealing to children. Pokemon and Star Wars and the like, but Star Wars is 40 years old. Pokemon is 25 years old. So folks that were experiencing that as a child are now 30, 35-year-old. So it seems like a slippery slope. We start talking about action figures, balloons, fruits. We have fruit on all of our packaging. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're not sliding down a rabbit hole where inspectors or auditors are left with a whole bunch of gray area when they walk into a facility. I understand the intent is to not be appealing, but it also appears like we're trying to police people's homes. If they come into a dispensary or other facilities making a purchase of an accessory that maybe seems cartoonish, I don't know that it's our responsibility as an industry or regulators to police what happens inside their own home.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any public comment for NCCR 6 or 7 on the online?
Dial *9 to raise your hand if you wish to provide public comment. Caller with the last four numbers 8507, please state your name before providing your comment. Dial *6 to unmute.
Hello, this is Sarah Adams from Planet 13. I just had a quick comment on NCCR 7.050. I know Kara mentioned at the beginning that you did receive some written comment regarding the delivery limits, but I just wanted to provide a specific suggestion. So previously, in the current regs, it looks like the ratio between the delivery limit and the transaction limit is 5-to-1. So if you could keep that same limit, so if the transaction limit is 2.5 ounces, then perhaps the delivery limit could be 12.5 ounces, or apologies, 12.5 ounces allowed to be delivered within a single trip. So yep, that's it. Just would like to keep the same ratio as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again,
There's
we
no
will be,
additional comment. Oh,
go ahead, Sarah, sorry.
but there's no additional public comment online.
Again, we will be looking at that delivery limit. However, again, it was put in place, a lot of it for safety of drivers, of having so much product and so much potential cash on hand. And there has been quite a few robberies of delivery drivers just in the last 6 months. So just be aware of that, and we will look at it again.
Okay, I will now move on to NCCR 12. NCCR 12.010 clarifies potency allowances for pills and removes subsection 2, which is already in the packaging requirements. And some of that language has been moved into 12.015. NCCR 12.015 was revised to remove redundancies and clarify packaging requirements for specific product types. The change to this product contains cannabis was actually already included in the previous revisions. And the plus or minus 15% variance was supposed to be moved into 12.015, but it was missed in error. So please note that that is our intention to carry that over to 12.015. And CCR 12.030, 12.035, 12.040, and 12.045 were all revised to remove redundancies and streamline labeling requirements. Are there any public comments in Las Vegas on NCCR 12.010 through 12.045?
Kara, it's Rihanna. Can I go ahead and give my input?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for making those requests that related to streamlining. Months ago, I worked on those with most of those with Amanda Connor, or some of those. I'm not sure how many of the streamlining came from that, but I know some of it did, and I really appreciate it. And I said this at the last time it was discussed, but I really appreciate that Amanda Connor took the time to actually come up with some proposals of how to streamline, because I think the CCB and industry agree that there are some ways that packaging and labeling could be improved, but there just needs to be more concrete, workable proposals. So maybe after this hearing, those, everyone in the industry could put their heads together and come up with some more proposals before we get to the workshop, because by then, the ball's already rolling, LCB's already looking at it. It's hard to make changes at that point. So thank you very much. The only thing I want to add is the one thing that hasn't made it in so far, and I'll keep requesting it at the hearings, which is to no longer require the labels at wholesale and allow the metric tags to replace them. I know there's the risk that the metric tag falls and then the product's not labeled, but I think that's the industry's risk, because if that happens, then they could be required to destroy that product. So that's my only input to request going forward. And again, thank you so much for working on all that. And I just want the industry to see the magic that happens if they come up with these proposals, and then and then you guys work them in, and everyone can get a bit of an improvement in their life. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Brianna. And I would just like to point out, I did look into your request for changing shall to may include a label, but I reviewed NRS 678B.520, which says each cannabis establishment shall, in consultation with the board, ensure products offered for sale are labeled clearly. There's some language in there that requires what they have to be labeled with. We did move things to packaging wherever possible. And there was also the number of servings that are required to be on the label. So we're open to other suggestions, like you said, but just wanted to point out that's those two statutes.
Let me look at it also. Do you mind sending them to me?
No, I can email them to you today.
Thank you. And I don't know that, people much more familiar with this will need to give input on this. I certainly didn't intend for things on the label to be moved to packaging. I don't know. I hope none of my requests resulted in that, because I don't think that's helpful to the facilities, or reduces redundancies or reduces extra work, because now they have to change their packaging. They can only fit so much on the packaging. So I think, I hope none of my requests resulted in that. And if it did, I take it back.
Vice Chair Durrett, they did not. It was really just because it was listed in both packaging and labeling for the most part. And so we streamlined.
Oh, right. Got it.
And then we said, if not already on the packaging, then, so it's more optional for packaging or labeling. Some things such as, ingredients need to be on the packaging, and that's consistent with FDA requirements and what we believe the FDA will do if and when they take over cannabis regulatory authority.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning. Like Martin, Nevada Cannabis Association. So I think you might have answered one of my questions related to the variance language.
Okay.
So it sounds like what you said was the language from 12.010 is moving over to 12.015. So it's not changing a plus or minus of the statutory limit. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Or the allowable limit,
Yeah.
which is the language used, which is the statutory limit, or at least has been for several years. Perfect. The other, I mentioned this in our letter, was the change, to make sure that I'm clear that the change about caution when eaten or swallowed, the intoxicating effect of this product may be delayed by 2 or more hours, is moving from the printed label to directly on the packaging. And I wanted to, as I stated in our letter, raise our concerns about changing to packaging and the expense associated with that and potential waste. And if we do make any changes, just that we're looking at it holistically because of the expense required with any change to packaging, because this exact warning is already conveyed on the label and in the printed material, it really weigh the benefit or anticipated benefit against the significant cost that there would be for printing this directly on the packaging.
Understood. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Kara Cronkite for the record. If we gave an allowance of a time frame, say 18 months, for example, would that alleviate your concerns for the cost?
I'm happy to ask that to
Okay.
the folks in the room and to our members as well, like how long it would take to run through their existing packaging. And I would say 18 months is longer than we've had in the past. So
Yeah.
that's, that's good, but I would ask the operators directly
Perfect. Thank you.
if that's sufficient time. And also, as I stressed in the letter, like that's a really long sentence to print on packaging, depending on the packaging. And so, California's is a similar message, but a little bit shorter, about half as long. You're just looking at being able to fit all of that. Are you actually conveying that message in a way that's legible and readable and understandable?
Understood.
And then I'll raise it, and I know that it's been raised over and over and over again, but trying to find solutions to the exit bags. And I know, part of it is statutory and part of it is obviously safety, and only about 50% of the packaging itself is childproof and resealable. And we do know that you can use a paper bag if the products at the point of sale are,
Correct.
meet those qualifications. However, we raised a concern before that at the point of sale, there's a compliance issue, which packages which are resealable, which aren't. And so I think a lot of facilities or sales facilities will just use the exit bag to make sure that they're compliant and be safe, but it ends up in a lot of ways. So we are continuing to work on it. We love working on that with you to try to find solutions to make that more environmentally friendly. Thanks for all I have on top. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Danny Baranowski, Vice President of the Chamber of Cannabis. I too wanted to touch on exit bags. For my 9 to 5, represent multiple brands and have been working in the industry on the sales and marketing side for years. Our organization also comprises, multiple different sectors. But when in regards to exit bags, one thing we'd like is clarification from the CCB to retailers, reiterating Lake's point that there is a bit of confusion at the point of sale, and our agent cards that are entry-level people don't want to put their agent card at risk, or the retailer doesn't want to do that as well. So specifically for some of these oncoming brands coming from other markets that are creating products that are already childproof, if the CCB could clarify if those products are in the basket, then they can be placed in a paper bag. And I wanted to clarify further, if the packaging is opaque, it is child resistant. So say like a bottle, for example, that is completely opaque. It could be technically opened and closed, remaining childproof, doesn't need any sort of bag beyond that.
Are you referring to like a pill bottle?
Like a bottle of liquid cannabis.
So either a tincture or a liquid edible.
Yes.
Okay, and Kara Cronkite for the record. Those regular bottles, to my understanding, once they're open, they're not childproof. They don't meet the requirements outlined here for 16 CFR or 1700, where they're childproof for multiple openings.
Okay.
If you have a bottle that meets those requirements or that you believe does, you can always send it to the CCB for review.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then, finally, just some further clarification and public education. I think there's a lot of nuanced rumors and gossip that makes it around and makes everything a little bit more challenging for all of us. So we appreciate any opportunity, and the chamber and my colleagues also offer ourselves as boots on the ground, people guiding this industry to help you guide the industry. So thank you for your work.
Thanks.
Good morning.
I'm Aaron Bako, Director of Compliance for Deep Roots Harvest. My question is in regards to 12.030 1B, the inventory package ID number as assigned in metric for all intents and purposes. My question is, at what stage are we capturing the metric ID number? Because you would have a lot for cultivation material, for instance, you'd have a lot that is now 5 pounds tested, passed, and it would be potentially broken into however many sub packages. So you have the parent tag of the lot down to a sub package, And then that package is broken into multiple child tags beyond that to sale to various facilities, internal, external, what have you. You would effectively be penalizing people who prepackage prior to any sales, because if it has to be the final child tag on the label, we would have to go back and redo our packaging however many times over. It just, for the sake of efficiency and waste and et cetera, et cetera. Just kind of curious at what point are we capturing that tag number? If it's the lot, fantastic. If it's the parent tag for, say, a lot was broken into 3.5 gram units and pre-rolls, is it that? Or is the intent to have it be the tag that is being transferred via manifest to the receiving facility? So just food for thought.
Great, you can clarify that and word it in a way that's not too cumbersome for cultivators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Jillian Nelson back again. My comment is actually the same as what he was just talking about. The package ID, if you guys are referring to us having to mark each package or each unit of cannabis with the package ID as assigned by metric that we would then be transferring over to the dispensaries, that is very cumbersome. My suggestion would be to do it as the parent batch. It would allow us to pre-label everything, and it would just be much more efficient that way versus having to potentially go from one parent batch to 70 like little soldier batches going out to stores. So that's just my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in Las Vegas?
Good morning, Amanda Connor for the record. With regards to 12.010, I think there might be an unintended consequence in the language. It was in there before lounges were passed, but it talks about a cannabis sales facility shall only sell cannabis in single packages which must not contain, and then lists the packaging limitations. I believe there's an intent to allow bulk packaging to go from the store to the lounge, but that language does not allow it. So I would suggest that there be some, intended for sale to a consumer or something language so that bulk packaging can go through the sales facility to the lounge without having to meet these packaging limitations, if that's the intent. The top does talk about bulk packaging, but then it doesn't, the cannabis sales facility is limited. And that's because it was prior to lounges, this language.
Understood.
True.
Gotcha.
Then next is with subsection D of that same thing, my understanding is we're still allowing the 15% variance, but with the deletion of subsection 2, does that mean that it can never exceed 100 milligrams of THC, even if we allow the variance? Or can it go to up to 115?
Kara Cronkite for the record. This is just for requirements for amount that can be in a single packaging. The packaging limit, the packaging language itself is on 12.015, and that's where it reflects that the 15% variance will be allowed.
Okay, so it would theoretically, if you hit 105, even though you were intending to hit 100,
right,
you could still sell that one. Okay, just wanted to clarify for everybody. The next one I had a comment on was 12.035, just in the title, talks about required labeling of products before sale to a retail store. What if the production facility is selling to another production facility, which does happen often? Are we not requiring any labels for those products? I don't think that's the intent, but just to clarify that, maybe we copy the title in 030 of just to another cannabis establishment to eliminate that. The other one I had was in in these in 12.040 and 045, I know we talk about single-use cannabis products labeling, but nowhere in the labeling is ready to consume address. And I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, there are some labeling, I don't know if we're calling them labeling, but some information that's provided to consumers for ready to consume products that were contemplated. And then I think I just wanted to clarify, Kara, I think you said this, but the way the language is written, if the list of ingredients is on the packaging, it does not also have to be on the label or any other things, right?
Correct.
Just to clarify for everyone, we're trying to eliminate duplicity.
Yes.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment in Las Vegas? All right, any public comment in Carson City?
Ed Alexander for the record. I just want to mirror some of the comments about labeling versus packaging requirements, because I think that if we added, not to be duplicating language, but if there was either or language in terms of labels versus packaging, because a lot of the ingredient statements that we're talking about, the consumption statements that we're talking about, a lot of edible packaging is very small packaging. And so when you try to add too much on there, now we've got to expand our packaging for no other reason than to accept the amount of verbiage that is wanted. So to me, like if you affix an exit label to a package and it has, you can flag it on the side of it so that it has all of the required language as part of it. But if we had either or statements, it might help, because it's a lot easier to print out a label with all of this language than it is to try to figure out how to shoehorn it onto already sometimes overwritten packaging. So that would be a suggestion or request. I also want to talk about forms of consumption from an exit packaging standpoint or a child resistant standpoint that may require additional items for the actual consumption. For example, a cartridge in and of itself is useless without the addition of a battery. So I know in the past, we've had dialogue around, hey, if there's another means or another vehicle responsible or required for consumption, that maybe we look at some wiggle room, because like I said, whether it's a cartridge, whether it's a concentrate, things that can't be used in and of themselves for inebriation, maybe we look at some wiggle on that in an effort to reduce packaging. And then in terms of an opaque package, we have CFR 1700 compliant push and turn jars that much of the flour in the state is sold in, which theoretically is resealable for multiple uses, but it can't leave the facility unless it's in an exit package because it's a clear jar. It just seems like regardless of what the packaging looks like, if it is in a child resistant, reclosable package, it seems like we should be able to have those things exit minus the exit bag, as long as it's allowable to be reclosed over and over again. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about how much information we're trying to put on packages, how the package leaves a facility. And then my final thought, we've been talking about exit bags for a long time and how to come up with a workaround. I can tell you, we've got thousands of customers that would happily recycle the hundreds, if not thousands of bags that they possess. And to me, it doesn't seem a lot different than a grocery store where, hey, you bring the bag back. Right now they're only allowed to use that exit bag for their own purchases. But if the industry was allowed to collect those exit bags and repurpose them, I think some of the intent that the industry is trying to minimize the footprint might be able to be accomplished. So a process where we don't get in trouble if we're recycling bags would be, maybe one step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. It's all good input. And for the record, Kara Cronkite, I also just want to point out that there are a lot of dispensaries that currently do reward customers for bringing their exit bags back to reuse them. There's nothing in statute or regulation that would prohibit that at this time.
For clarification though, Kara, my understanding is they can only use that bag for their own purchase. So if I have a customer that wants to bring me back 100 exit bags that they've accumulated over the course of the last 5 years, that's not allowable. I can only reuse that exit bag for that specific customer's transaction. That's my understanding. Could you clarify?
I'll look into that for you, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, is there any public comment online?
Dial *9 if you wish to provide public comment. Caller with the last four numbers, 8507, go ahead.
Hello, this is Sarah Adams calling from Planet 13. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One little nit, which I don't think was intended. I'm looking at NCCR 12.015 in the new subsection 5. In the requirement relating to child-resistant packaging, it references that it must be child-resistant in accordance with 16 CFR Part 1700 and the standards specified in subsection 3 or 4. I think, and the standards specified in subsection 3 or 4, I think that's just left over from when this section was, when this language was up higher in the reg, I guess. It was referencing subsection 3 or 4, which relate to edible products, but this new subsection 5 does not relate to edible products. So I just think that probably that little blurb and the standards specified in subsection 3 or 4 can probably be removed from this subsection 5C, if that makes sense. Let me know if that's confusing at all.
Got it. Thank you, Sarah.
Sure. And then also, I just want to echo what people have been saying regarding the metric tag. So I guess I want to understand the purpose of putting the metric tag in place of, for production items, the production run number, or in the case of cultivation items, the batch and lot number. As has been explained, every time we divide a parent batch of products, we have to assign a new metric tag, and we would be having to relabel and all of that stuff. I think we're still accomplishing tracking products with the production run number or the batch and lot number for flower. And so I'm not seeing how the metric number being added is a benefit at all. Like, I understand we've already talked about how it could be a detriment, but why is it better than putting the production run number or the batch and lot number for flower?
Sure, Sarah. Kara Cronkite for the record. This was actually a request that we received from industry representatives. We have no preference or, either way is fine with us. We were proposed the idea stating that it would be less space taken up on the label rather than batch and lot numbers. But if the industry would prefer that we stick with those numbers and the production run number, just submit your input and I'll be happy to make the change if that's what everyone agrees on.
Okay, understood. Okay, so then in that instance, I didn't realize other facilities were requesting that. In that instance, I would go ahead and agree with the comment made by Deep Roots Harvest relating to just having some specificity on which, at which level the metric tag should be added, or if it needs to be the child package number, then I would disagree with that change because of the operational inefficiencies. Okay, but that makes sense. And I will apologize, I didn't submit a written comment, but I do intend to, if it's acceptable to you, I do intend to email you in some comments by the end of the day, if that's fine with you, just so you
Absolutely.
have all plus a little more detail on what I'm saying. I'm not, just reading a wall of text to you. And then, okay, so in relation to the cannabinoid profile and the terpenoid profile, which is required just on all of these, the cultivation label, the production label, and the retail label. In 12.030, there's the addition, the CCB has proposed the addition of detected in front of cannabinoid profile and also for the terpenoid profile. That same word detected isn't in 12.040, so I would suggest that it be added there as well. I do really appreciate that addition, but if it could just be consistent across all of the various labels which require cannabinoids and terpenes. And on that same vein, we're currently required to provide the top 3 terpenes. Planet 13 would really appreciate if we could also just limit the cannabinoids to the top 3, because there are instances in which we have, like 8 different detected cannabinoids in a package. But, only a few of them are really worth mentioning, so several may be detected, but in such small amounts that it just kind of takes up a lot of room to put 8 different cannabinoids on the label. And, if the consumer does wish to know everything that was detected in the package, then of course they're more than welcome to request the COA. And Planet 13 is actually in the middle of implementing an electronic labeling system which called Lucid ID. I'm not sure if we have spoken about that specifically, Kara, but point being, we're going to allow consumers to review their entire COA just by scanning a barcode. And so for our purposes specifically, I think we probably could request and receive approval to provide all cannabinoids just via the COA accessible via the QR code. But for those in the industry who may or may not be implementing a similar system, I just think it would be helpful to limit it to the top 3 or 4 or, whatever.
Great.
And then I also hoped we could receive some direction on the number of decimal places and whether to be reported on the cannabinoids and the terpenes. So number of decimal places, and also how it should be shortened to, if it's to the hundredths place, should it be truncated at the hundredths place, or should it be rounded at the hundredths place? Our preference, my personal preference is that lab results be rounded, because I think truncating is not as accurate a representation as rounding. But just point being, we would appreciate some standardization, and we've run into this issue because of now this is our own issue, but because of this electronic labeling system that we are trying to implement, we're pulling the full lab results via API from the lab, which could be, like 20, it could have 20 decimal places or something like that.
Right.
But the lab is on the face of the COA, they're only reporting, they either truncate or round. And so if they truncate or round, and then we do the opposite, then there could be differences between the COA and the label. And so some sort of standardization between truncating and rounding and the number of decimal places, I think, would really be appreciated. And I would suggest rounding to the nearest hundredth place.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And then generally regarding the concept of packaging versus labeling, I understand that the statute in various places requires that products be labeled with XYZ information. Unless there is a definition of the verb to label in the statute, which I just haven't seen, I'm not sure that the intent was for the label to be technically a separate thing from the packaging. My guess would be the intent was to provide that information to the consumer with the package, whether it's actually printed on the packaging or not. If something is printed on the packaging, I would still say that the package is labeled with that information, whether it appears on a black and white label or if it's on the artwork. And so in that same vein, I would really appreciate the flexibility to put certain things either on the packaging or on the labeling. As long as it's provided to the consumer at all, then in my view, what does it matter if it's, you know, on the nice pretty red packaging or if it's on the black and white label? And we've previously discussed the concept that labels fall off or labels can be easily removed and things of that nature. So I would suggest a way to make CCB happy and also give us a compromise is if we can show that the label is permanently affixed, then I would like the flexibility to provide certain information only on the label rather than on the packaging. And so permanently affixed may need to be defined in some way as, you know, a label which can't just fall off, a label which actually adheres to the packaging, a label which can't be removed without damaging it, something of that sort, just so we can, you know, feel that information will be physically in the consumer's hands in one piece, but it's fine on the packaging or on the labeling is my goal.
Understood. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then finally, apologies, I had one other. Oh, okay. On the retail label requirements, we are required to provide consumers with a net weight in both ounces and grams. And that isn't a requirement on any of the other labels, like the cultivation one just says net weight, I believe, and the production one just says net weight. And it doesn't specify a unit. And so I wondered if on the retail label, we could change the and to an or just, you know, remove the units altogether from the regulation relating to the net weight on the retail label. So just leave it at net weight or have it say net weight in grams or ounces or something of that nature. The consumer is still going to know how much they're getting, you know, regardless. But I think also the point is kind of, we use grams for flour, and I think that's pretty widespread that we use grams for flour. And unless it's in a larger quantity, I suppose, but there's not going to be an eighth bag where somebody's going to say, oh, I got 3.5, or sorry, opposite of what I meant to say. There's not going to be an eighth bag someone's referring to in ounces, I guess. They're just going to call it, they're just going to call it 3.5 grams or an eighth bag verbally, I guess. Having the option to do grams or ounces or whichever other unit, honestly, would be really helpful to us so that we can, I'm trying to get to the point where I don't have to print a retail label at all, because all the information required on the retail label already appears on the packaging or on the label from earlier stages, like the cultivation label or the production label, except for the net weight part. And so if I could just avoid having to print a retail label solely because I'm missing the net weight in 2 different units, then that would be really helpful for us. So we'd save a lot of money and just, you know, eliminating that extra label. And I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
I don't. Thanks, Sarah. Derek, did you want to talk about weights and measures?
Yeah, in terms of this is Derek Entz for the record. That's a good point with the net weight. That's something that we are constricted with weights and measures. So all products that are sold have to have a net weight. I do think that for flour, including just the gram, you know, what the package is, if it's 3.5 grams, I see that could be, I mean, I would be amenable to that for allowing that as the net weight, since that is the, the package is 3.5 grams. But in some ways, we are constricted with having net weight on the non-flour products because that's an NIST handbook requirement from feds at Department of Ag Weights and Measures.
And
kind of
is it
overseas.
required in both units? Apologies for the interruption, but is it required in both units or just one?
I can look into that as Derrickens for the record and get an answer back.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
All right. Are there any other public comments online?
There are no other comments online.
Hey, Kara,
Okay, I
this
will-
is Steve. Before you move on, Ed would like to add to his public comment if it's possible.
Sure.
Hey, real quick, net weights, I want to make sure we don't have conflict between metric and our labeling requirements, because metric transfers include packaging and include everything else that is part of that transfer. So if for example, somebody transfers me a 5-pound lot of flour, it doesn't register as 5 pounds in metric. It's inclusive of the box that it's in. It's inclusive of all of the other components to that. So if we ever get into the rabbit hole of trying to extrapolate data from metric, you're not going to have parity between what the metric transferred weight looks like and or many of the transporting companies. Blackbird requires packaging requirements. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about net weight, are we talking about the actual weight of the product, or are we talking about in the case of like gummies, inclusive of packaging? Because okay, I see the heads nodding in the right direction. And then my last comment is, I think a lot of what we're looking at here could be addressed with just some and or statements. I mean, I see places where the metric label makes more sense. And I see places where, the complete production information makes more sense, but as long as either or is included in the packaging, I think it meets with the intent. And you may find that there's, an inspector that walks in, as long as they can see something that takes them back to where they want to go. And if there's an issue, a consumer can trace things back to the originating package. I think that's really what the intent is. So, like I said, some and or statements might eliminate a whole bunch of angst on behalf of the industry. So thank you guys for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Keoki Allen for the record. I wanted to address two things. One being the labeling and putting the package ID number on the label, and then two about the transfer manifest. So there's two sections on the transfer manifest. It includes the net, and then it includes the gross. The gross includes all the packaging, the shipping container, things of that nature. We are working to get that a little bit more streamlined so it's more understandable. But for right now, the net is the cannabis product. The gross is everything. So the idea behind that is to say that the person that's receiving it, they see the gross weight of the container and all the product in it. It left from one facility at that gross weight. And when it comes into your facility, you should be able to take it, put it on your scale, and it should be pretty much the same weight with the small variance. So that is the intent of that. When it comes to the packaging and putting the, and we will update the language because it should, coming out of cultivation and production, it should be the source package, meaning the package that was tested. That's the test, that's the package that you pulled the test sample out of. That source package tells us everything that we need to know. It tells us who produced it. It tells us your harvest batch. It tells us the production batch. It tells us everything. So to reduce the amount of information on the label, to streamline it, we felt that, we've I've received multiple inquiries of why we just can't go with the package label and remove all this other stuff off of it, because it gives you all the information that you need to know. And so that's why we opted to just go with the package ID number, we will correct it to put the source ID number so it's more clear, because that is the ID number that you pull the test information from.
All right. Okay, now I will continue with NCCR 12. So 12.050 has been cleaned up to remove redundancies and also includes a requirement to provide the soil amendment report or lab COA to consumers upon their request. This could be an electronic medium, such as a QR code or any other way that you'd like to provide that. 12.070 has been revised for clarification on advertising requirements. Are there any public comments in Las Vegas on NCCR 12.050 or 12.070? Any public comment in Carson City?
And Alexander, for the record, in the interest of having, parity throughout all of your written language, 050 subsection D, contains no more than 10 milligrams of THC. I don't know how redundantly you want to be in terms of making sure that consumers are aware of the plus or minus 15% variance allowance, but I'm just nervous that when we see things that are plus or minus, you get an 11 milligram edible and somebody thinks that they're buying something that's not compliant based on the fact that it states that there's no more than 10 milligrams of allowable THC. We may want to get more granular as consumption lounges and things like that come online so that people understand that, hey, that there is an allowable deviation because they're not going to go and research the rest of the regs. So just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ed. And I will point out that these disclosures and warnings that are required, they come, I believe, straight from statute, but I'll look into it and see if it has any room for a revision. Thank you.
I kind of missed the comment for Las Vegas. My comment is about soil amendment reports being required for edibles. I understand the importance of soil amendment reports for extracts and for flower. However, with an edible, we're not only adding just cannabis into that edible. It's including ingredients that are sourced from multiple different sources of agriculture. So it seems kind of odd that soil amendment reports would be required for like the cannabis put into edibles when we don't have soil amendment reports being required of where the flower is being grown and how it's being grown, the sugar, all the other things going into our products. I would just suggest that soil amendment reports not necessarily be needed for edibles. It's rather, it's a very small part all in. So thank you for listening.
Thanks.
All right. And are there any public comments online?
Dial *9 to raise your hand. There's no online comment.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 3, solicitation of input for possible amendments to NCCR 6, 7, or 12, or any regulation specifically affecting packaging, labeling, and advertising of cannabis. Again, this is the open comment period. If you have any changes other than what we've already discussed, please feel free to come up to the podium and bring them to our attention. And any public comment, any comment here in Las Vegas? All right, any comment up in Carson City? Any comment online?
Dial *9 to raise your hand if you wish to provide public comment. There's no comment online.
All right, that was easy. Move on to agenda item number 4. Again, this is a closing public comment. Any comment here in Las Vegas? Any comment up in Carson City? Any comment online?
Dial *9 to raise your hand. There's no comment online.
All right, quick and easy. Again, I'd like to again say thanks for everybody showing up today and providing input. It's really appreciated. Again, it'll help us streamline and make the regs better for the entire industry. And we'll move on to agenda item number 5, and we're done.